Over 40 people were killed and 63 injured in a massive suicide bombing on Saturday morning at the Quetta railway station in Pakistan's Balochistan. Most of the casualties were suffered by the recruits of the Pakistan Army from the Infantry School. The suicide bombing was claimed by the Baloch Rebel group, Balochistan Liberation Army, who identified the suicide bomber as Muhammad Rafiq Bizanjo. Over the last 3 years, there have been a sudden rise in the suicide bombings, attacks and targeted assassinations by the Baloch rebel groups against the Pakistan Army and the Frontier Corps. In a similar attack against the Chinese convoy ahead of the SCO meeting just a couple of weeks ago, several casualties were reported near the Karachi airport. Meanwhile, the Indian cricket team has decided to not visit Pakistan for the Champions Trophy slated to be held in Pakistan in January next year. The tournament is likely to be held in a hybrid format with matches scheduled in multiple countries. Pakistan's Defence Minister Khwaja Asif has pledged tit-for-tat action against India for not visiting Pakistan for the Champions Trophy. Pakistan Defence Minister has also questioned Indians for abstaining from the debate on Kashmir at the Oxford Union in UK to be held on November 14th. Viewers, I can confirm that I was invited for the debate as a Kashmiri and as an Indian journalist to the Oxford Union debate, but withdrew my participation when I was informed about the invite also being extended to a terrorist associate, Muzammil Ayyub Thakur, in UK. I find it incredulous that an institution which has such a glorious reputation is seen as a flag bearer of democratic credentials and would do itself incalculable harm by inviting people like Muzammil Ayyub Thakur to such an august forum. Much as I would have wanted to participate in the debate, which would be fair and open within the parameters of democratic diligence, it seems the referee represents a certain side. The states of India and Pakistan, as carved out by the British, may be new, but the Indian nation had existed for 5,000 years, and Kashmir has been its cultural, philosophical, and polemic fountainhead. As a Kashmiri exiled at birth who would yearn for peace, it would have been a great opportunity for me to express my views, but I'm afraid that the dice seems already loaded. A great institution, or at least a section of it, seems to have been hijacked by the very forces who are inimical to its foundational values of democracy and debate. Anyways, the questions that now we are asking on the News9 Plus show today. Why has there been a sudden rise in the Baloch attacks in Pakistan? Has the Pakistan Army failed to keep attacks of BLA and TTP under check in both Balochistan and KPK? And will the security situation in Pakistan further deteriorate? Joining me on the debate today, General Satish Dua. He is a defense expert and former GOC of the 15 Corps. We also have senior journalist from Pakistan, Imtiaz Gul. And finally, Francesca Marino, senior journalist and author of Balochistan, Bruised, Battered and Bloodied. General Dua, if I can come to you first to understand what's been happening in Pakistan. We've seen continuous attacks, a new front being opened in Jammu. We also saw a lot of attacks happening in the Kashmir Valley from the Pakistani terror groups. But it's unprecedented that in Pakistan, the security situation has been worsening to a level where media friends in Pakistan are telling me this is the second biggest suicide bombing in the history of Pakistan, perhaps, in terms of the casualties that the Pakistan Army has received. What does this say about the security situation in Pakistan and, of course, the way things are developing both in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa?
I would like to start by saying that, one is only reminded of what Hillary Clinton had said when she'd come to Pakistan.
Right.
That's a very famous quote by now going round, that if you rear snakes in your backyard, it is not as if they will not come to bite you, or they will come back to bite you as well. Mm-hmm. So the fact is that Pakistan has been exporting terror, certainly across the borders to India, and we have been bearing the brunt of it over the last several decades. Now, over the last few years, the situation in Pakistan has taken a turn for the worse. Mm-hmm. I think the inflection point was when the US troops withdrew from Afghanistan, because till then, the US needed Pakistan's active support in day-to-day maintenance of their troops, the logistic supply chain supply of their troops in Afghanistan. But once they've withdrawn, I think there a vacuum has been created, which initially Pakistan thought, initially Pakistan had hopes of creating strategic depth inside Afghanistan for themselves, but I think the tables have turned, and they are no longer able to wield the influence in the Afghan dispensation
Right.
as they hoped they could. And consequently, the terrorist groups in Pakistan have raised their head. Now, Pashtun problem is well known. They don't recognize the Durand line. Now, their own, you mentioned TTP yourself. So, what is happening on both sides of the Durand line is, is of concern. But I am an army man here. I have been fighting Pakistan terrorists or terrorists incited by Pakistan in our country, in Jammu and Kashmir and elsewhere. Yet, I will not wish, uh, that terrorism disrupts the life of any country.
Right.
My heart goes out to those who died in this attack.
Hmm.
Young recruits, young boys, civilians. This is the another scourge of terrorism. Whereas in olden days, armies used to fight the armies. An odd civilian death was called collateral damage. But in terrorism, you do not have collateral damage, because collateral damage is civilian targets. You actually target only the civilian targets. A railway
Right.
station is a civilian target. This time, no matter there was a few soldiers, but most of the terror attacks around the world are not on military installations, they are on civilian targets.
Right.
So, coming back to the point, I think I will end by saying that today, this attack that has happened is sad, but whether it is Balochistan or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistan is having to really race with terrorism, fight terrorism with all its might. Pakistan is also on a very low spot economically, politically, diplomatically. So I think it's all adding to their troubles.
Fair
But
enough. Let me take
if you
that.
will,
Yeah. I'll
yes,
come back to you.
after I will like to say
Yeah,
later.
sure, sure.
No, later I will come back to your other question about what's how's in Kashmir and how is their role in that. Thank you.
Fair enough, General Dua. Let me take that to senior journalist from Pakistan, Mr. Imtiaz Gul, joining us. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Mr. Dua said something very interesting. General Dua said that, there are troubles within Pakistan. Do you think that the Pakistan army, and we know perhaps it's a public knowledge that the real power center is in Rawalpindi, do you think they lack control when it comes to Pakistan today because of the frequent terror attacks, the frequent bombings that are happening? On an average, if you analyze the kind of attacks that are happening in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or the former FATA areas, every day either a Frontier Corps personnel or a Pakistan Army personnel or a personnel associated with the Pakistan Army is being killed. Is this because of the political turmoil? Is this because of the kind of situation that Pakistan Army is in right now?
I think these are all very naive questions and observations raised first by you and then by General Dua. The primary question is who are TTP, ETIM or Daesh or BLA or BLF? Are they doing this just on their own, or are there external handlers of all these organizations? Because after all, if they are killing civilians as well as the security apparatus people, why would they be doing it? Do they want to seize the state of Pakistan? Can this ragtag army, TTP for instance, 6,000-7,000 people, hope to seize the state of Pakistan? Or can the BLF or BLA, the Baloch Liberation Army, really hope or dream to take over Balochistan, turn it into an independent Balochistan? It's certainly not the case. Yes, there are symptoms of a malaise. The snakes that you mentioned too, Hillary Clinton's talked about, now they're being fed by somebody else. And that's why we see this mayhem. That's why we see there's so much terrorism. Now, when we are dealing with proxy terrorism, that is very difficult to stop. That is very difficult to prevent, because the choice of the venue and timing always rests with those people who plan, who have a certain target in their eyes, and they just execute the threat. Yes, there are problems with the Pashtun grievances, with the Baloch grievances. They should be addressed much more diligently. We need a more effective policy to address the grievances of the Baloch youth in particular. But now to say that the entire Baloch youth is up in arms against the state of Pakistan is rubbish, I would say. It's not the majority of the Baloch youth. Their sense of deprivation must be addressed, no question about it. But the General and all you guys have to also raise a basic question: why would the TTP or Baloch Liberation Army or Baloch Liberation Front would be attacking Pakistanis in general indiscriminately?
Mr. Imtiaz Gul, but I respect your opinion not only because you're a senior journalist, but also because when people like you speak up, the Pakistan Army or the ISI is known to enforce disappearance, and many senior journalists, activists, unfortunately, cannot speak the truth to power because they are immediately arrested or disappeared for years together. A lot of examples have also been seen. But there are other inconvenient questions, Mr. Imtiaz Gul. And these inconvenient questions are about Mahrang Baloch, who was stopped from going to New York when she was awarded. And she was not allowed because the Pakistan Army, who you spoke about, fears Mahrang Baloch. They fear democratic activists in Pakistan today, in Balochistan today. We also know the reality of how these snakes in the backyard of Lashkar-e-Toiba, of Jaish-e-Mohammed, of Hizbul Mujahideen, of Al-Badr are staying in Pakistan today, are getting safe haven even today when Pakistan claims that they are also victims of terror and acting against them. The masterminds of 2611, the masterminds of all attacks that are happening and have been happening for years together in the Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir are also staying and fed in Pakistan, and there are videos of Pakistani politicians whining and dining with them. But let's go across to Francesca Marino, who for decades has been tracking Balochistan very closely. Francesca, how do you see these developments? You would of course say that it's not new. This kind of a armed rebellion has been happening for years together. But I personally see in the last 2 to 3 years a sudden shift and a sudden increase, not only in the armed rebellion, but also democratic voices like Mahrang Baloch coming ahead and actually asking tough questions to the Pakistan Army.
I see the situation worsening because of the total state of denial Pakistan is into. I mean, proxies, the general narrative is always, yes, these groups are somebody else's proxies.
Right.
Of course, Pakistan knows very well what does it mean using terrorists as proxies. Has been their foreign politics strategy for years and years. But I would not put Balochistan in the same league of other terrorist organizations. Mm-hmm. What Pakistan refused to address is not the deprivation of Balochistan youth. It is the fact that they are not fighting for a sense of deprivation. They are fighting, first of all, because they want independence. Mm-hmm. Second, people do disappear. People disappear every year more. Finally, of course, this made young people raised. They have been growing up in a state of war. They have been growing up in a place where you will never know whether your family or yourself will be back home when they go out. Mahrang Baloch, who's a educated girl, took the lead not of an armed revolt. She took the lead of a legal protest against the Pakistani state, asking not even for the return, just to know where the disappeared are, how they dealt with women and children and old people going to to Islamabad to protest, showering them with water in the middle of the winter and refusing to talk to them. When there has been another protest, thousands of people peacefully in the street, what they did, they sent 2 killers to assassinate Marang.
Right.
She has been put in by Time magazine into the list of the most influential 100 young leaders of the world, invited to New York to attend the gala. What they do, they stop her. Then after 5 hours, she walks out of the airport. They stop her car, take the phones, take her passport, arrest the driver, take the car, and leave Marang and Sami Baloch in the middle of the night in the street. This is how, and then what explanation has been given? She is a troublemaker.
Right.
This is how Pakistan deals with troublemakers. Another troublemaker I know, who was a human rights activist, an Amnesty human rights activist, has been taken in full daylight and tried in front of a martial court, even though he's a civilian.
Right, right. I have one last question for General Dua. I know you've been patiently waiting. I have just 30 seconds, General Dua. The question of Imtiaz Gul, when he said that our questions on terrorism are naive, and the actual Baloch, BLA and TTP are funded from somebody else. But the question really remains that these terror groups were nurtured by Balochistan, at least the TTP in question. The Taliban for years together was given a safe haven, and Pakistan all their life thought that Afghanistan and Taliban will work as their team B over the years.
Like I said earlier, Pakistan was hoping to have strategic depth in Afghanistan. Things have just gone wrong for them. They thought, like you said, it would be their team B. I would also like to take the same kind of his question. He made a remark that what do these Baloch Rebel think, or TTP think that they will suddenly seize power in Pakistan or make Balochistan an independent country. Actually, I would use the same sentences to say, what does Pakistan imagine, or the terrorist group imagine? That they will suddenly come to power, they will take Kashmir as a separate state from here. They've been trying the same things in Kashmir for years. Today, when suddenly over the last 5 years there is better development, there's a sea change in everything. When Article 370 happened, they made a lot of noise. And pardon my colloquies, but after doing everything else, Pakistan had to lump it. Then eventually we have a lot of prosperous development, everything happening, and then suddenly they thought there won't be elections. Everyone said we will not participate. Now there are peaceful elections. Not only peaceful, we've had participative elections. We've never had such polling percentages.
Fair enough. General Dua, I'll have to cut you short because we are running out of time. Apologies for that. But thank you very much to Imtiaz Gul, General Dua and Francesca Marino for joining us. Pakistan can dream about Kashmir, but the reality is that Kashmir is much more prosperous than Karachi today, with the kind of violence that is witnessed in Karachi almost every possible day. The Baloch are upping the ante really against Pakistan. And of course, in time to come, it does seem that the security situation in Pakistan is certainly going to worsen.